Welcome to Fighting Stats, the ultimate channel for MMA fans who love statistics and betting breakdowns. I'm your host, Art C, and I'm here to get you ready for the upcoming UFC fights. In this series, I'll be watching tape and providing my real time analysis on how I think the fights are going to go. I'll be watching for fighters' strengths, weaknesses, tendencies, and overall strategies, pairing that with Fighting Stats' exclusive UFC stats not available anywhere else to give you a prediction on how I think the fights are going to go and ultimately who's going to win. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to Fighting Stats. Welcome back to Fighting Stats. I'm your host, Art C, and today we are breaking down the UFC 297 fight between Canadian Mike Malott and UFC veteran Neil Magny. We did tape all of the UFC fights for Mike Malott. Very impressive. And then we taped the Neil Magny side. Again, UFC veteran, lots of wins under his belt. I think he holds the record for most welterweight wins, beating out George St. Pierre. So that's a feather in his cap from there. But we'll get into it. Let's get into the stats first. We'll remind you of some of the fights that we watched, some of the stuff that we noticed, and then we'll get you a breakdown and best bets at the end of this. So stay tuned. So right off the bat, Neil Magny in the UFC, just in the UFC, 21-10, 10 losses there. 24% of his wins are coming by KO or TKO, 10% by submission, but most of his wins are coming by decision, 67%. On the losses side, 20% of them by KO, 50% of his losses coming by submission. So that's worth noting. 30% lost by decision there. On the Mike Malott side, again, 3 fights there, only 1 win by KO, 2 wins by submission. Very savvy on the ground there. So we're starting with Neil Magny, offensive striking. Right away, what I noticed is different is his breakdown in terms of strikes breakdown. So a lot of people have more like distance striking around 80% to 90%. Magny here hovering just under 60% distance striking. His clinch striking is up to 20% or 19.4, and his ground strikes up to 21% as well. So meaning he's not just a distance striker. He does like to clinch. He does like to get the fight down to the ground, and then he will sort of wear on you, punch you out from the ground. In terms of his target breakdown, 81% of his target shots are going towards the head, 12% to the body, and 7% to the leg. Not a huge leg kicker, 7% only leg kicks there. Head accuracy only at 39%, body accuracy 75%, and leg accuracy 76%. His average strikes thrown by rounds does go up as the rounds go on. Again, I tend to look at rounds 1, 2, and 3 because not many of them have 5-round fights. So Neil Magny, 28 strikes thrown, 39 in round 2 and 44 in round 3. Similar stats here with the head strikes, 17, 15, and 15 on average head strikes. The leg strikes sort of dissipate as the time goes on. Knockdowns, he has 2 knockdowns, I believe, in his UFC career. Again, the long, extensive career dating back to 2013. So he's been fighting for almost 11 years. Only 2 knockdowns. Again, not a lot of his wins coming from KO. If they do come, they're more from like, I'd have to go back and see, but 2 knockdowns in his UFC career, not the best. Clinch strikes, again, up to 19 there. Big clincher. Ground strikes as well, up there as well. So that's sort of what stands out on the page. Defensive striking, 74% of the strikes absorbed are at a distance, 16 on the ground, and about 15, I believe. 10% in the clinch. In terms of strikes against, 75% of the strikes against are towards the head. His head striking defense, 36%, not bad. 67% striking defense towards the body, and 90% towards the legs. Could have fooled me after watching that Ian Gary fight. Strikes absorbed by rounds seems pretty consistent, hovering around 23 to 25 strikes per round, no matter what the rounds are. But then the strikes to the body or to the head seems to dip off again. Rounds 4 and 5 skewing some of that data there. In his UFC career, he's been knocked down 8 times. Again, we talked about the distance striking, things like that, so we won't go back into that. significant strike percentage 45%. So Mike Malott on the offensive striking, again, the sample size very low, so don't put too much weight into this, but unlike Neil Magny, 88% of his strike breakdown coming from a distance, 11% from the ground, and only 2% in the clinch. Not a big clinch guy. Target accuracy, he does mix it up, 73% to the head, 22% to the body, and 6% to the leg. Also not a huge leg kicker. Head strike accuracy, 45% on head strikes, not bad. 86% to the body. Leg accuracy pretty low at 67%. And then again, average strikes thrown by round, Mike Mallott's only seen one round two, so it's going to be very skewed here. We won't go into detail there. So over his UFC career, though, he's only thrown 6 leg kicks, landing only 4 of them. Again, most of his fights ending in round 1, so that's probably a reason. But 6 ground strikes landed, 6 ground strikes thrown. Majority of his strikes coming from a distance there. So defensively striking, pretty much better numbers here. 96% of the strikes at a distance, so he likes to fight at a distance. 79% of them towards the head. 33 striking distance to the head. 60% to the body, 33 to the leg, and that's because he's only eaten or absorbed 1 leg kick, 1 punch or 1 strike in the clinch. 61 strikes landed at a distance. So on paper, definitely Mike Malott with the better striking details. But again, small sample size for Mike Malott and huge sample size for Neil Magny. Going over to our grappling report here, we look at average takedowns per round for Neil Magny. Attempts 1.6 takedowns in round 1, 1.4 takedowns in round 2, and 2.2 takedowns in round 3 attempted, averaging 1 takedown landed in round 3. Sub attempts sort of rise up there in round 4, but otherwise they're pretty consistent at 0.1. Same thing with reversals. He does get controlled pretty there. Again, that's a total control time by round. We're going to go into takedown defense. Neil Magny has attempted 142 takedowns. 58 of them have been successful. The last time Neil Magny landed a takedown was against Daniel Rodriguez in the first round, and then 3 in the third round there. Otherwise, not a huge takedown guy in the later ends of his career. Clinch accuracy. Okay, so now we want to look at defensive grappling. We saw it in the Ian Gary fight. Ian Gary wanted nothing to do with the ground. So again, some of these numbers a little bit skewed, but nonetheless, 97 takedowns he's seen. 43 of them have been successful. Takedowns against by round, he's been taken down 0.5 in round 1, 0.6 in round 2, and 0.5 in round 3. So not the greatest, not the best, but decent numbers in terms of his grappling. Strike absorbs, again, knocked down 8 times. We talked about that. Okay, Mike Malott, offensive grappling. I seem to notice that Mike Malott doesn't engage in the grappling, but he is able to defend the grappling. So when he did get it down to the ground, he was able to get it there. So Mike Malott, 100% takedown accuracy, only shooting 3 takedowns, 3 of them being successful. In those 3 fights there, he has 2 sub attempts, 1 reversal, didn't throw one punch in the clinch, 6 ground strikes. Against Mickey Gall there. So red defensive grappling, I'm not going to go into it. He's only seen 1 attempt against Mickey Gall. That takedown was successful, but I think he popped right back up after that fight. So not huge numbers there in terms of our grappling report. I did want to highlight some of the Neil Magny stats that we do have in terms of his fight time. A lot of the time, again, we talked about his fight time standing. 56% of that fight time is standing. A lot of that time is attacking takedowns or defending takedowns. 15% attacking takedowns, 18% defending takedowns, 7% in the clinch here. We go over to striking tendencies. Again, this is only for Neil Magny. We're working on the Mike Malott stats. So Neil Magny in the blue here. We talked about his jab and his lead hook. He does stand orthodox. He keeps that lead hook very out there. So his jabs are really from here to there. So we count those as jabs because, again, he has that high guard. He's keeping that out there. He's popping that jab a lot. 24% of the time he's popping that jab. 19% of the time he's going like a hooking motion, but there's not much of a difference between the jab and the hook. And then we talked about that rear high kick, 13% the rear high kick, and 6% the double jab, 6% the 1-2. So pretty basic striking, what we've seen from Neil Magny over his career. So yeah, those are the detailed stats. I want to go into the actual breakdown here. So this is how I think the fight's going to play out. We saw in the Neil Magny Ian Gary fight. Ian Gary beat up that lead leg, okay? And Neil Magny couldn't adjust and couldn't switch to southpaw, stood in orthodox the whole fight. So there's no reason for me to believe that Neil Magny is going to change it up now at the tail end of his career. After 31 UFC fights, he's going to come out southpaw? Not a chance. He's going to come out orthodox. He's going to stand on the outside of the cage. Looks like he's going to have a little bit of a reach advantage, 7 inches of reach, 2 inches of height. But Mike Malott, we saw him switch it up. When he fought an orthodox, he fought in southpaw. When he fought a southpaw, he fought in orthodox. Mike Malott has that ability to switch stances based on the fighter he's fighting. Now, I think the reason is that he likes that leg kick, or sorry, that rear kick. He goes to the body quite often. So from southpaw, if Magny's going to go orthodox, I think Malott's going to counter in southpaw, and he's going to rip those kicks to the body. Continued body kick, body kick. We did see in the Ian Gary fight that Neil Magny cannot check leg kicks as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Malott saw that fight, saw that there's a definite weakness of checking leg kicks, and Mike Malott goes towards throwing leg kicks. Again, he's only thrown 4 in his UFC career. Body attacks thrown, 22 body strikes, 19 of them landed. So I think he's more keen on going to the body, zapping some of that cardio. But I wouldn't be surprised if he works the leg kicks either. Again, so it's going to be southpaw versus orthodox. Magny's going to pop that jab, 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 double jab we talked about. But the difference is Mike Malott has a very nice jab, and he has a nice 1-2. When you're doing southpaw versus orthodox, it's all about that rear hand and rear leg. So Mike Malott, if he can land that, it's going to be left hand from southpaw, land the straight left on Magny, it's probably going to be one of his go-to weapons. On the ground, so I think striking wise, I think Mike Malott's going to have a power advantage, somewhat of a speed advantage. I think if Neil Magny is going to have any success, it's going to have to be in the clinch, pushing Mike Malott up against the fence, dragging Mike Malott into deep waters. I think he finds some success there if he tries to do that. But I said the same thing against Ian Gary, and he wasn't able to do any of that. So onto the grappling side of things, again, I don't see Neil Magny. He might look for a takedown. I just don't think he has any success with the takedowns. And unlike Ian Gary's not. Mike Malott's not going to be afraid of going down to the ground with Neil Magny. If Neil Magny engages in the clinch like he does like to do, clinch him up. Mike Malott has some nice trips, outside trips, inside trips from the clinch. I wouldn't be surprised to Mike Malott getting the takedown. Even off of his back, I think he's okay. He'll pop back up. But if he does get the takedown on top, we've seen Neil Magny spend extended periods of time off of his back, really trying to, not get submitted. He got submitted there by Gilbert Burns. Obviously, that's not a bad loss. But then Neil Magny was also on the ground here. Shavkat also submitted, again, not a bad loss as well. Shavkat and Gilbert Burns, some of the top fighters in that division. But Mike Malott, one of those up-and-coming prospects. Again, he is undefeated. We talked about this in the Ian Gary fight where they might put an up-and-comer. Again, this fight card is in Canada. We have Mike Malott on the pay-per-view main card in Canada around his home field advantage. He lives down the street from the arena. So he's on the pay-per-view right under the championship fights there. And they're feeding him a UFC veteran, a high notable name ranked guy in Neil Magny. And it's a very winnable fight for Mike Malott. I think if it goes to the ground, Mike Malott's going to destroy him on the ground. I saw some very impressive submissions, getting the arm triangle from opposite half guard. I'm always impressed with that choke and the ability to squeeze there. And then the one-arm guillotine that he got in his last fight, again, also very impressive. 30-second win by guillotine in his Dana White Series debut as well. So Mike Malott, no slouch on the ground. I can definitely see a path to victory on the ground. But again, if it stays standing, it's not like Magny has a huge advantage on the feet either. Again, I'm going to say this again. For Neil Magny to win, it's going to be a greasy split decision. If you go back to the Phil Rowe fight, he has to copy that exact fight. Drag him to the cage, extend clinch time, work the clinch, close the distance, make it a really boring 15-minute fight where you win a greasy split decision. The other way that he could possibly win is like we haven't seen Mike Malott really go 3 rounds or really test his cardio. It's possible Neil Magny wears on him and drives that cardio down into the third round and then comes forward and then wins round three, or maybe even finishes Mike Malott in round three. I just don't see it. It's possible, but it's not likely. How's that? And so I think in the clinch, Mike Malott's going to be stronger. I think on the ground he's going to be stronger. I think in the feet he's going to be able to punch. I think he's going to look very similar to the Ian Gary fight. Ian Gary basically controlled him. I think one of the judges' scorecards was 30-24. So if you didn't watch that, you can imagine how much of a one-sided beating that was. Ian Gary not able to finish Neil Magny, but Ian Gary didn't want anything to do with the ground. I think if Mike Malott takes Neil Magny to the ground, I wouldn't be surprised of an arm triangle finish. We have seen Neil Magny get finished by arm triangle before. Not surprising. So let's pull up the numbers. Let's see if we can find the best bet here. All right, so we pulled up our fighting stats handy dandy bet tracker here. This is what I like to do. I like to go through the various options, come up with the best bets, use some math to determine where the best value lies. So we're going to start with Neil Magny here in the blue corner. Neil Magny to win by TKO. Does it happen? How does it happen? Again, I do think that it's possible, but it's reliant on Mike Malott gassing pretty hard just because I'm not about to stand here and say Mike Malott has great cardio into round three when I haven't seen it before. Even some of his regional stuff ended pretty early. But if it does come, it's going to have to come late, I think. Neil Magny, not a ton of power in his hands. Again, we only said that he had 3 knockdowns in his 11-year career in the UFC. I don't think it's coming. I don't think it's very likely. I'm going to leave it at 5%. I want to say 10% to be respectful, but we'll leave it at 10% for now. Neil Magny to win by submission. Again, if it happens, it's going to be pretty late. I just don't think so. Mike Malott's pretty good on the ground. I can't give it more than 5%. I'm really willing to give it 0 there. And then Neil Magny to win by decision. Again, if he's going to win, it's going to be probably by decision. It's probably going to be a greasy split decision. I just don't think it happens too often. I'm going to leave it at 10% for now, and then we'll adjust it as we go. Mike Malott to win by TKO. Magny is pretty durable. I will give him that. He can take some big shots, take some big punishment. He's used to it, but I do think it's live just either through leg kicks, through punching, different various options. Even ground and pound is pretty live there for Mike Malott. So I'm going to put it at 20%. That sounds about right. Not much more. Win by submission, I do think is live as well. We've seen Malott just ragdoll people, just really savvy on the ground. I do think that he's live to win by submission. I'm going to put it around 25, even 30% is not out of the question there. And then Mike Malott to win by decision. I mean, it's possible. Again, Neil Magny, very durable in the past, so wouldn't surprise me, like the Ian Gary fight, that Magny survives and loses a decision. I think Mike Malott's more likely to finish than Ian Gary, so we're going to put it at 20% for now. Yeah, we're still off here. Let's go 25% on that side, and then so we're missing an extra 5%. I don't want to put 30% Mike Malott sub because then that's 1 in 3. I think that's a little bit too high. Maybe the decision there. I don't think it's going to be adding to Magny TKO, not Magny sub or Magny decision. I think it's going to really have to be on the Malott side. I'm going to add it to decision just based on sort of what we've seen there. So to recap then, Neil Magny to win by TKO 10%, Neil Magny to win by submission 5%, Neil Magny to win by decision 10% for a total of 25%, or a money line of plus 300. Even that I still think is kind of low or kind of high. Mike Malott to win by TKO 20%, Mike Malott to win by submission 25%, and to win by decision 30%. For a total of 75%, total money line of minus 300. I still think it's probably around 80%. I still want to take 5% away from something. I just don't know what. Maybe it's TKO. Put it into his decision. 35% decision. Neil Magny TKO goes down to 5%. All right, so Made a minor adjustment there on the fly. Just moving 5% makes a big difference in the odds there. So we're dropping Neil Magny to 20% or plus 400, and we're dropping Malott to 80% minus 400 or better. I think that does sound about right. I just don't see many times how Neil Magny is going to win this fight. Again, I think I can cover myself by betting Mike Malott money line and then covering by like a Neil Magny round three and Neil Magny split decision. I think those are really the only paths to victory for Neil Magny. In this case, I don't see him really outside of a flying knee, a spinning back fist, but he doesn't really throw them that often. He doesn't have a ton of power in his hands. I think Mike Malott can eat those punches easily, come forward and punch through them. I think this is a setup fight for Mike Malott. He should be able to cruise there. If he doesn't finish him, it's going to be like a 30-27. I do think he finishes him, probably submission again. I'll be looking for those type of props, but those are my numbers here. I'm going to see where the numbers are at right now. Just give me a second. Fightodds.io. I do remember seeing this line open. A lot of people saying that the line was off. I do not agree that it is off. I think it's about right. So Neil Magny plus 220, Mike Malott minus 260. So that is not a bad line. Let's put that in here. So 20 money line minus 260. 260. Neil Magny here. I think I said 170. Neil Magny plus 220. Okay. So we put it into our calculator here. We have our 8th Kelly criterion calculate or formula here. It's telling us here at current odds of minus 260, we cap him around minus 400. So we think Kelly criterion says put 3.5 units on that bet. I'm not opposed to it. I want to just see if we did change this to 70%, 75%, it drops it to 1.3. So it's still recommending a bet, just not as much. But at 80% implied odds, it is saying 3.5 units at minus 260. I will consider that after this episode here, but make sure you like and subscribe. I will post all of our plays to our Patreon, patreon.com/fightingstats. That's where I put all my notes. Anytime I make a bet, first thing I do is I race over there and put it there for everybody to see on the Patreon. But then I do this research and best bets as well here to give you an idea of where my head's at. So I'll be posting this content fairly shortly on our YouTube and social media content. Make sure you like and subscribe. That's about it. I don't think there's much else to add. I think Mike Malott's going to just cruise to a win here. Neil Magny's probably on the tail end of his career. I don't know how many fights he has left, but just UFC, and it's obvious in the matchmaking, they're using him more of a stepping stone, a big name sort of thing. I think Mike Malott cruises. So let's hope so. Props to Canada. See if Mike Malott can be the next GSP from Canada. We are waiting for a fighter to step up. Maybe this guy is the guy. So all the best, Mike Malott, in your UFC 297 fight coming up. I'll see you there. And again, my name is Art C. Thanks for watching. This is Fighting Stats. Okay, guys, well, that is it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you smash the like button, hit the subscribe, and you'll get notified anytime we put out new content. Again, my name is Art C. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Electrocute. This is Fighting Stats, the ultimate source for exclusive and in-depth MMA statistics and best bets. We'll see you guys at the window.